Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. This is Crime Time with Connie and I am obviously Connie. If you are new here, I sit down, used to be every week, and I will discuss a true crime case. Now, I've been a little bit MIA lately. That is because life has been punching me in the face. It's just a lot of things have been going on in my personal life. If you don't care to know, just skip forward. But my husband is on a rotation in the military where he's gone for, it seems like forever. But this is the third time he's been gone for a while. And this time it's probably the roughest. I don't know why, but I am a military brat and I don't know why this one's the hardest. And one of my dearest friends, one of my childhood best friends, passed away, and that's been super difficult. I said I wasn't gonna cry. Times during my break, I wanted to give up completely, but my friend would beat me up. She would tell me to keep going, and that I know she's here with us today. So this one's for you, Allie. We love you. We definitely miss you. Today's case I have been working on for a very long time. I have recorded this before, but I decided to scratch it, re-edit it, because a lot of updates have been happening, and my camera quality, that's a whole different other story. So I am back again, and hopefully it made the cut. So, without further ado, let's dive into today's case. On March 2nd, 1996, Alicia Showalter Reynolds vanished. A couple months later, her remains were found. She is believed to be the first victim of the Route 29 stalker, who at the time had reportedly been trying to lure female drivers to pull over under fake guise of car troubles. Her case is still unsolved. We are going to go over possible suspects, and the most recent one being Rex Heuermann. But first, let's talk about who Alisa was. Alicia Faye Showalter was born on August 5th, 1970 to parents Harley and Sadie. She grew up in Harrisonburg, Virginia. She did have a twin brother named Patrick and a younger sister named Barbara. She was a graduate of Harrisonburg High School, where she was an excellent student. After she graduated from college, she would reside in Baltimore, Maryland, where she was a resident at Johns Hopkins University for their pharmacological engineering program. Now, at the time of her disappearance, she was actually working on a vaccine for river blindness. Now, if you're wondering what river blindness is, it is a parasitic tropical disease that affects the skin and eyes. The disease is spread by repeated bites from an infected black fleas. It's most common in those who live in remote African villages. People who travel and volunteer in the areas are also at risk. And this is from the Mayo Clinic. Alisa's mom, Sadie, said, quote, "If you told her she couldn't do something, she'd probably do it. She was also the kind of daughter you could learn from, and I'm going to miss that." Alisa was very, very smart. It was said that she cared a lot about helping others. When Alisa was 25 years old, she would marry Mark Reynolds. They dated for about 3 years, and she disappeared 14 months into the marriage. To me, very quickly after you get married, and devastating that the person you're going to spend your whole life with disappears. Mark said that Alisa was very dedicated to the idea of helping others. On March 2nd, 1996, Alisa got into her white Mercury Tracer She headed down US Route 29 from Baltimore to meet her mom at the Charlottesville Mall. Now, Alisa was in for a little road trip. This road trip was about 3.5 hours. She would be traveling 150 miles, and she was supposed to be at this mall by 10:30. So it was estimated that she left her house by 7:30 that morning. Route 29 is long. It stretches from Pensacola, Florida to Silver Spring, Maryland. It's over 1,000 miles. Although the weather this day was a little gloomy, there was a light drizzle, a little bit of fog. It was supposed to be a very special day because not only was Alisa going to hang out with her mom, they live a little bit far away from each other. Alisa's twin brother Patrick was getting married, and Alisa was going to pick out her bridesmaid dress. I do want to point out that at this time, Alisa's brother Patrick was also a resident, and he graduated from Vanderbilt. This was his first year of medical residency. Alisa, John Hopkins, her twin brother, Vanderbilt. No matter where you go for education, is honorable, but for your twins to go to John Hopkins and Vanderbilt, that is so cool to me. And at this time, their younger sister Barbara was studying French horn in Rochester, and anytime I see Rochester, I have to point it out because that's where my dad Elvis is from, and of course he likes the Bills. So I guess I'm warranted to say go Bills for my dad. I don't watch football, and to study an instrument, I could never. So Sadie, Alisa's mom, was waiting outside the mall for a while. She's waiting for her daughter to show up, and she's getting a little bit worried. Now, at this time, it is 1996, and cell phones were not very popular. But Sadie did have a cell phone, and actually, the night before, she gave Alisa her cell phone number. Alisa did not have a cell phone. If she needed her mom, she could call her. So since Alisa did not show up yet, Sadie called Mark and was wondering where Alisa was. He reassured her that, the weather's not great today. Maybe she slowed down. Maybe she needed to take a break. Just wait a little bit longer, and if she doesn't show up, please call me back. So Sadie did that. She waited, and no Alisa. So she called Mark back, and that's when they made the decision to contact the police. And this was by 2 p.m. She waited for roughly 4 hours for her daughter to show up, and Alisa left her house by 7:30, so she should have been there by now. Alisa's car would be discovered by 6 p.m. that night by state troopers, and her car was found about 50 miles away from the mall, just a little bit outside Culpeper County, Virginia. And at Alisa's car, there was a white napkin tucked underneath the windshield. This is an indication that, hey, I have car trouble. Someone's going to come and help me, or I'm going to go get help. They also found a few cigarette butts and a black glove near the car. Now, this is a highway. There's junk everywhere, which it's not cool. You shouldn't litter. But something to note. Now, the cigarette butts, the black glove, definitely want to take that note. The trooper also noted that there didn't seem to be any signs of struggle. No blood, didn't look like a ruckus occurred. He also found the paper with Sadie's phone number on it. I do want to say in Alisa's case, police took action very quickly, and they actually set up a roadblock where they asked people if they saw anything. Did they see Alisa? What happened? And several witnesses came forward that they saw Alisa, and she was not alone. Alisa was at the front of her car, looking under the hood with a white male. And it seemed to be a friendly conversation. They seemed to be talking about, maybe the car trouble she's having. And they also said that she got into his pickup with him. His pickup truck with him. And this occurred around 10:30 to 10:45, which now gives police a little bit of a timeline. Witnesses say that this man was white, 35 to 40 years old. He was about 5'10 to 6 feet, medium build, light to medium brown, or maybe a reddish hair color. And the pickup was a dark colored, either blue or green, but it was a Nissan pickup truck. The police would develop a sketch of this man from the witnesses' accounts, and this caused other female witnesses to come forward. Over 20 females, 23 to be exact, came forward saying that this man is the same man that they encountered with. Police believe this man was not helping these women. He would get their attention somehow. If they did pull over, he would lie to them and tell them that they had car trouble. He would get their attention by honking or screaming, saying, "Hey, there's sparks coming out of your car. Pull over, something's wrong with your car." Whatever he said to get them to pull over. Now, some women pulled over and others kept driving. They're not dealing with this. Now, the 3 women that got into his truck accepting help said that this man took them to a payphone with no issues, that he was friendly. They would go on to say that he had a toolbox and a green tarp in his car, and that he said his name was Larry Breeden. Now, for the women that did not get into his truck or that did not pull over for him, they said he was not too nice, that he would yell, pound his fist, and that he just wants to help them. Very different account from the witnesses that actually accepted his help. But they would take their car to go get examined by a mechanic, and there was nothing wrong with their vehicle. And it turns out Alisa's car did not have any troubles either, that there was no mechanical issues. And this is when Highway Stalker 29 comes into play. Obviously, police believe this man was not helping her or the other women. He would get their attention somehow. Alisa pulled over. He lied to her like he did to the other women and told her she had car trouble when in fact she did not. A week prior to Alisa's disappearance, a woman came forward saying that she was attacked by this man. She lived in Prince William County, Virginia, and she was driving through Quantico, and it was later in the night. She stopped for this man, and he said his name was Larry Breeden. He said sparks were shooting out beneath her car. Of course, she accepts a ride to get help. And during this car ride, this man was starting to get a little sketchy. He would try to pull over more than once, and she was getting worried. So she asked him, like, "Hey, what's up?" And he blamed it on lights or the frost. But she became very agitated once he tried to pull over again. She was like, "Hey, just please bring me to a payphone." He became very angry with her. At one point, he threatened her with a screwdriver. She ends up breaking her leg. I also saw other reports that said she broke her ankle trying to escape from his truck. Now, reporting of this is very different, but the main thing that happened to her was that he got angry with her. She is fighting back. She tries to escape, but he's also throwing her out of the truck. He gets agitated with her, and he starts to drive, and she's caught into the seatbelt. She ends up breaking free. She breaks her leg or her ankle, but she escapes. And this was just 1 week prior to Alisa's disappearance. After investigators listens to what the witnesses tell them, they are on top of the search for Alisa. Luckily, her credit card was found on a Culpeper street just a few hours after her disappearance. On Friday, March 8th, just 15 miles south from where her car was found, On State Route 626 in Madison County, a woman found a parka belonging to Alisa, the same one, of course, she was wearing that day she left. Although these were good clues, they still need more to find her. Alisa's husband, Mark, said he would drive countless miles along county roads around Culpeper looking for her, and that is so heartbreaking to hear. I know my husband would do the exact same, hopefully. Harley, Alisa's father, he actually went on the radio and he appealed for help. He recorded a message for everybody begging for help. Asked the public to please be on the lookout for Alisa, and if you recognize this man, please come forward. He's probably being sketchy. He might have changed his appearance or his pickup truck. Investigators released jewelry pics she wore in case someone tried to pawn it or a man gifted his girlfriend some new jewelry and the woman notices like, hey, this looks exactly like the woman who disappears jewelry. Let me tell investigators what's up. But that did not happen. Sarah Harley also suggested a community search where he asked residents to please walk your properties, check buildings that are not being used, that appear to be empty, and to sadly look for any fresh earth where she might have been buried. Cell phone sales actually went up around the area where Alisa disappeared, and 90% of the people who went to go buy a cell phone mentioned Alisa, saying that they were fearful and that this caused them to get a cell phone. One of the buyers said, being a female and alone is not always safe, and it really isn't fair. Not only were residents buying cell phones, but they were buying pepper spray. They said that they were actually locking their doors for once, and dog training became very popular. People were adopting dogs and training them, or if they did have a dog, they were starting to train them just in case. And sadly, on March 7th, only 2 months after her disappearance, Alisa's body was found in a shallow grave. Her body was found 20 to 30 yards from a road, which is Route 751. A man that worked nearby saw birds circling in the sky. He thought maybe the vultures were circling an animal, and upon further investigation, this man discovered Alisa's body. She was covered with tree branches, and she was only 15 miles east where she was last seen. The discovery of Alisa's body is truly heartbreaking. Her family said that they are very glad that the birds gave a signal, letting them know where Alisa's body was. That way they can have her home now. The location of where Alisa's body was discovered is a dead-end road, pretty much. The only people in this area are residents, and because this area is surrounded by woods, there's going to be a lot of hunters in the area. Along with the hunters, there is a nearby childhood center, and I believe the man that discovered Alisa's body, he worked at the child center. This man must have been familiar with this area to put her body here. It's not an area where everybody knows exists. Investigation of the crime scene. Police canines combed through the area to search for more evidence. They also had their officers write down the license plate numbers just in case the killer came back to look at the crime scene, because it's not unusual that psychomaniacs, murderers do this. An autopsy would be performed on Alisa, and to this day, investigators have kept 99% of that information to themselves. But Dr. Friera, who is the director of Virginia's Department of Forensic Science, he found a latent fingerprint invisible to the naked eye, and he believes that this could identify her killer. He did not state where he found this fingerprint, but he said it wasn't on her body. Now, I would like to talk about Dr. Friera because he actually helped exonerate a man named Marvin Anderson. Anderson was sentenced to 210 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. And Dr. Friera actually found evidence in 2001 that proved Marvin's innocent. And this was for a sexual assault case. Dr. Friera was also a pioneer in the use of DNA profiling, and Virginia, fun fact, was the first state laboratory capable of performing DNA fingerprints. Alisa's cause of death has never been released, but they say she was likely murdered the day of her abduction. Authorities believe they know her cause of death, but they are not willing to tell the public. For one, to protect privacy and to allow a fair investigation. Although it is frustrating for the public not to know a lot of information about the case, if investigators do release too many details to the public that only her killer would know, it could be harder for them to catch him and to prove his guilt. Also, if someone does come forward, that he would know everything about the crime scene and he could give the positive information that they need for the arrest, or someone could slip up and be like, hey, only the murderer would know that. Larry McCain, who is a criminal profiler, he told the public that he felt like this man did not mean to kill Alisa, that it was a sexual fantasy gone wrong. And he doesn't believe that killing her was a part of the fantasy, that the whole situation went bad and he lost control over the situation. He panicked after her murder, but he had a plan just in case something went wrong. He threw the parka and the credit card in a different location to throw police off, or he just wanted to get rid of them because they are evidence. Larry said that this man probably fantasized about women who looked like Alisa, short, brunette, young looking. That this man practiced stalking women, building up the courage, that seeing how far he could go. He also said that this man probably knows the Culpeper region, but probably doesn't live there, that he's shy, polite, helpful with women, but he has a violent temper and has emotional outbursts at inappropriate times. Several of the witnesses said that this man would flick his hair off his forehead. This could be a sign of a nervous tic. A few months after Alisa's disappearance, Unsolved Mysteries actually aired an episode about Alisa's case. It aired on November 15th, 1996, and now investigators are hoping that this sets the murderer over the edge. He's getting attention, and not attention that he wants. Some killers want attention and they want to be caught, but it doesn't seem like this guy wants to be caught, because since Alisa's case, there has not been any signs of the Stalker 29, and that Alisa is the only known victim of this highway stalker. Investigators are saying that this man is probably pulling away from activities. This man might be off. He might have changed his appearance, might have gotten a new car. People around him will notice a shift in his attitude. Other side of it is that this man might be talking about Alisa, planting a little bit of breadcrumbs. He might be talking about her. He might have mentioned her once or a lot. One of the investigators said he killed once, When the pressure's off, he'll probably kill again. Alisa's parents said police believe there is someone who knows the suspect but is afraid to come forward. Obviously, the police wants this person to come forward, that maybe he has a spouse or a girlfriend that is in a very dangerous situation and is scared to come forward. Some witnesses say that he was wearing a wedding ring, but he's probably married or in a serious relationship. Could be rocky or it could be perfect, but most likely rocky. Of course, her family hopes that after Unsolved Mystery airs, that this could bring justice or help save another woman's life that he might try to prey on. A lot of tips did come in, but none made an arrest. But there would be more murders in the region. In June of 1996, just 30 miles away in Shenandoah National Park, a couple, Julie and Molly, were found murdered at their campsite. I have covered it, but I highly suggest checking out Mile Higher podcast with Kendall Ray and her husband Josh. They did a great coverage of this. There was also breaking news this week that their murderer was found. That's why I'm also re-recording this. My last video, I talk about who murdered them. There's a possibility that that man is also responsible for Alisa's murder. Now, they thought it was a man named Daryl David Bryce. Not a good guy. He was actually charged with Julie and Lolly's murder, but he was let go after DNA evidence proved that he was not their killer. And this was in the early 2000s. There was also a man who we will talk about, Richard Evonitz. I'm going to read from the FBI. Their statement said recently the private labs successfully pulled DNA from several items of evidence and assistance from the Virginia State Police. The profile was submitted to the FBI Combed DNA Index System, which is CODIS. There was a positive match to Walter Leo Jackson Sr., who was born on November 2nd, 1947. Jackson was a convicted serial rapist originally from Cleveland, Ohio area. He is deceased. He had a lengthy criminal history, including kidnapping, rapes, and assaults. I am hoping that they will test the DNA from Alisa's crime scene and see if it's this Leo guy. He also is not a suspect in the Colonial Parkway murders because he was in prison at that time. I also found in a different article that says that this man was in Cleveland 4 days after murdering Julie and Lolly, where he committed another crime in Cleveland, Ohio, where he assaulted a woman. So it's not far-fetched that he committed his crimes very close together. Alisa disappeared in March. Julie and Lolly, they went camping in late May, but they were discovered on June 1st. And then just 4 days later, he goes and commits another heinous crime. Again, I am alleging that he could be responsible for Alisa's murder. He doesn't look like this sketch, but again, this picture of him was like in the 2010s. In September of 1996, a young woman named Anne Carolyn McDaniels was found burned and gagged in nearby Lignum. She was reported missing after she did not return back home to the group home she was living in. She told everybody that she was meeting a guy on a date, but unfortunately she was found deceased by joggers. Her case is still unsolved. In September, a 16-year-old girl named Sophia Silva went missing from her Spotsylvania home after doing homework just outside her house, just on the front porch. It looked like no foul play took place. All of her books were neat, and it just looked like she just disappeared into thin air. Sadly, on October 14th, 1996, she would be found deceased in King George County. just an hour away. 7 months later, in May of 1997, 15-year-old Kristen Lisk and her 12-year-old sister Katie was abducted and murdered. They were found 5 days later under a bridge along South Anna River. They were also from Spotsylvania. Not only are the locations similar, but Kristen and Sophia were found to have similar things done to them. I don't want to go into too much detail, but it seems like these abductions were linked. Luckily, their murderer would be caught, and that is Richard sometimes I would care how to pronounce people's last names, but I don't care about him. Evantins. He would be announced as their murderer after a young girl, Kara Robinson, escaped from him. And I actually knew about Kara Robinson's story. I watched one of her TikToks, I want to say like a year or two ago, and she, so brave. She was abducted by Richard. She was just outside of, I believe, her friend's house watering flowers. He took her, he held her captive into his apartment. Luckily, she escaped, and Richard, the coward he was, while she escaped, she got police. He was gone by the time they got there. And investigators eventually did catch up to him in Florida. His wife was on vacation in Disney World at this time, so I don't know if he was heading towards his wife. But I read that he did take his own life, but some sources say that when he saw the police, he did this, but I also read that he did this after the canines were released. Kara was only 15 at the time, and Richard preferred young girls. He had a history of exposing himself to young girls. It would come forward that he would sexually assault young girls, and he got slapped on wrist, and it just kept happening, which just makes me sick. When investigators went inside his apartment, they found he was the kind of serial killer that kept trophies. He had newspaper clippings. They found DNA linking him to Sophia and the Lisk sisters. Richard was actually living in Spotsylvania from 96 to 99. He was living within 8 miles of the girl. Sadly, no evidence links him to Alisa. They did, however, find notes mentioning roads near where her body was found. Now, Sheriff Knight, who gave a press conference about Richard and the updates into the young girls' cases, he said, "I hope the son of a bitch is burning in hell." And I think we can all agree with Sheriff Knight. How is Richard a suspect in Alisa's case? The note was a little bit, shady to me, that roads nearby where her body was dumped. He's familiar with Virginia. He lived in Spotsylvania, which is not far from where Alisa was discovered. He also told his wife to stay away from Shenandoah Park because it's not a safe place for a woman to be. Now, I've always wondered, did any of the women who encountered the Stalker 29, could they name Richard as the guy that gave them a ride? And the woman who was assaulted by the man before Alisa's disappearance, at one point she did name Richard as the guy, but she also named Daryl David Rice as the guy. So unfortunately, that's the only one who I know that has named anybody, the suspects, as the man that drove. Now I'm hoping that the witnesses hopefully can recount what this man looks like, because Rex Heuermann is also now a suspect in Alisa's case because her family feels like he resembles the sketch. And he kind of does. Now, what was Rex Heuermann doing in the night? during this time. If you're not familiar, before we get into that, who is Rex Heuermann? You know, you guys probably know who he is. He's on the magazines, he's on the news. It's the Long Island serial killer. He's been caught. He's been a serial killer for like 3 decades, and he is his most of his victims were sex workers, and unfortunately that happens a lot for serial killers because they feel like no one would notice if a sex worker is killed, and that was his MO. Now recently, Rex Heuermann has been charged with additional murders. The earliest one is dating back to 1993. Now, the only thing that makes me believe it's not Rex is because why would he set up a different MO as to being a stalker on a highway where he doesn't even live? Now, his mom did move to Virginia in, I believe, 1994, so this could occur. He could have done this visiting his mom, but over 20 women in a short span of time, just a month, that it doesn't really add up to me. And he is known for driving a pickup truck. Going back to Leo, the man responsible for Lolly and Julie's murder, he was not driving a pickup truck during this time. He was driving, oh gosh, I forget what kind of car it is, but it's not a pickup truck. I will put a picture of it that I can, if I can. But again, the car he drove into the park that day, he could have gotten that car after maybe allegedly he murdered Alisa. And another thing that makes me believe Leo could possibly be Alisa's killer is because at Julie and Lolly's crime scene, there were cigarettes and a black glove found, just like in Alisa's case. So that's the only thing that makes me believe it could be Leo. But going back to Rex Heuermann, could he have changed his MO because he felt like it? Or maybe he wanted to try something new, you know? Or maybe he tried the sex worker route and he thought that was too dangerous, so he wanted to try something new. But then he thought, oh wow, I'm on, this is getting too much attention. I'm going to go back to what I normally do. And it's now coming to light about how much stuff and organized been made public about the list he made about, what to do if something goes wrong and how to dismember bodies and location stuff, like just creepy, sickening things that this guy had. Now, the criminal profiler said that this man was probably married. I do want to note that Rex Heuermann did get married to his second wife, I believe April of 1996. And the criminal profiler felt like this man's relationship could be rocky, or maybe, if it is Rex, allegedly, he's worried about getting married again. And they would become pregnant soon. I could not find his daughter's birthday, and honestly, I don't care when her birthday is because it's none of my business, but she is 27 years old, and that would make her being born in 97. Maybe he's worried about becoming a father. Maybe he wants one more thrill before he gets married. He wants a change. All these what ifs could be. Now, there was a victim of Rex in 96, and her name was Karen, and that's the only one I could find around this time. Patrick, Alisa's brother, feels like there is a resemblance to Rex Heuermann in the sketch. So I'm hoping that with Heuermann's arrest, that this would cause them to test the DNA against him, see if it's a match in Alisa's case. Now, I do want to note that Heuermann has pleaded not guilty to charges of second-degree murder in the 2003 death of Jessica Taylor and the 1993 death of Sandra Costello. So everything I said is alleged against Rex Heuermann since he is pleading not guilty, even though there's so much evidence against him. Alisa was found murdered in 1996 It has been 28 years and her case is still unsolved. I did read a news article that said that her brother and sister, they put blue ribbon and gold ribbon where her car was abandoned, and they chose these colors because, I believe it was navy blue was her favorite color, and the color gold represented her personality. And they put the ribbon there to, of course, honor her, but also to let drivers know to be a little bit more cautious. I feel it. I feel that her case will be solved soon. And even though so much time has passed, she still needs justice. And I really hope it comes soon. If you wanted my opinion, I'll give it to you. But if I haven't made it very clear, I believe allegedly it could be Leo responsible for. But again, he doesn't really match this sketch. It's the only thing. But again, I don't know what he looked like in the 90s. Rex does kind of look like the sketch. He does. Hello, everyone. I am from the future. I am editing this right now, and I just want to say I'm sorry for all the stuttering. I'm human. I've stuttered my whole life. I can't help it, but I tried my best to edit it out. I wanted to talk about Alisa's mom's phone number. She had it written down on a piece of paper, and she did this for just in case of emergencies. And Alisa did, in fact, become in an emergency. So I believe, in my opinion, when Alisa got in the car with this man, and of course he probably offered her to take her to a payphone, who was she going to call? Her mom, where she was closer to, or her husband, and he's far away? I think that's where the fight occurred, was that she wanted to go back to her car to get her mom's cell phone number, or that's just something I thought of that I thought I might add. I found it odd that she didn't take her mom's number with her. But it could be nothing, it could be something. But I'm gonna hop off here and then conclude the video. For me today, I just want to say I'm so thankful that Lolly and Julie's case has been solved, and I'm hoping that if this man did hurt more people, that this will cause a domino effect of justice, that DNA is getting tested and more of the heinous crimes that he could have committed are being solved and people have some form of relief. But thank you for being here today. And if you are going through a rough time, I hope it gets better. If you are in a grieving process, like me, I think we'll be okay one day. Yeah, I hope you guys stay safe out there. And as always, oh, I'm sorry, I messed that up. Please, please, please be safe out there. And as always, stay golden. I know he hasn't been on here for a while, but he's going to say goodbye to you guys. He's going to sign us off. Now all 3 dogs are going crazy.